Okay, so Mr. Weber, if you can't guess by his last name, it's Jake's dad. And Jesse's not here, so he doesn't exist.
Still Jesse's dad.
And then there's Derek and Justin too.
There's
a lot of Jays around. We're like bold.
Same with us.
No, that's right. Because
We're Goldie
You had to
Jays.
decide so quickly the name.
no, it wasn't that. Actually, it's a funny story. I don't need that. We named our kids on spite.
Oh.
No, we did.
For
You
my
lied.
family?
What?
You lied.
No, I didn't lie. I didn't lie. We found out that that's part of the funny part. Is that no? We named our kids on spite. Okay. So Sarah, do you need these lights on? These bright lights, or
It
can we
looked
just turn
good.
the house lights on?
No, keep them on. I
Okay.
can see you. So now I can't see you at all.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I'm the fat guy in the front.
The backlight is like blocking there.
You just see a silhouette or something?
I have bad eyes whatsoever. And then Sarah just showed a laser in my eye earlier. Like, there was an
Anyway, so we named my kids out of spite. Many of you know my wife Jill, and she's awesome. But she grew up in her family. Her father's name is John. She's the second. Her oldest sister's name is Jonna, and then Jill, and then Janae, and then Jackie, then John, and Jeff.
Wait.
Okay, that's she and all of her siblings. So they were all named Jay, with a J name. And in my family, my father's name was Walter Owen Weber.
Wow.
No, he was. Well, yeah, wow. And then my oldest brother is Bruce Owen, and my next brother is Stuart Owen, and I'm the youngest as Chris Owen. Cow. So you can see we went downhill from wow to cow. I have been trying to live up to my, initials, but that's all right. But so we all have the middle name Owen. And so Jill, when our first son was coming along, we didn't know it was a son at the time, but we said if it's a boy, she said it doesn't matter what it is, the name has to start with a J. And I said, well, fine. If that's the case, if it's a boy, he's got to have the middle name Owen, because it's a family name. If I had it, my father has it, grandfather has it, his father, it's been passed down through the ages. Turns out, so anyway, that's how we ended up with all J names in the front, and Owen, and their all middle name is Owen as well. Which is great, except that every single one of them says Jow. Jow.
when you could have had cow.
Never thought of that. That would be biblical and exciting. I said Paul Owen Weber.
Yeah.
I thought about that. Anyway, so they.
Good idea, Jake.
But what was really funny was later on, much later on, after they had grown and were all young men, and we were sharing this story with my mother. After my father passed away, we were sharing it with my mother, and my mother said, "What?" When we were talking about Owen being a family, and she goes, "What?" And well, I said, "It's passed down through the family. All the guys got the name Owen." She goes, "No, we were just lazy." So we carried on the lazy family tradition. So that's how Jake ended up with the name Owen. What can I tell you?
Wow, Jake.
I'm excited about that. You can tell. You can sense his excitement. Okay. Did I hear you right, Bob? What?
Wait, so when is Miss Jill coming to Steve?
What? Oh, wait, this guy. All right. Okay, we need to get started though because it's going to be a choice lesson.
Yes!
It's actually a lesson about choice. But first, we need a snack. I know you just ate. Maybe we'll have dessert. Not a little snack, but this snack is going to be, what snack do you ask? It's going to be Spam. No, we're not going to eat Spam. Yes, and actually this goes back to when your father asked me to teach a lesson, on about 8,000 years ago, it feels like. That's when he was the youth director at St. Paul's.
Yeah.
And they were having a lock-in and they asked me to come and speak, and they wanted me to do, I did a top 10 list then too, and so tonight from the home office of Duluth, Minnesota, we have tonight's top 10 list, which is the top 10 non-culinary uses of Spam.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Non-culinary, as in you don't eat them. Anyway, uses of Spam. Number 10 is earplugs. Works well as earplugs.
Do you know that for a fact?
The experience. Number 9 is actually the origin of the Nerf ball. Very few people know that, but it's a dried, Ew. Number 8 is abstract artistic expression of man's inhumanity to man. This is what Spam is very specific. So I would read that on the back, but I can't see it way back there. Okay, number 8 can be dried to make fake puke. It's good for that stuff too. Number 6 is it stops nosebleeds.
That would cause my soul to bleed.
Yeah, so that stops nosebleeds. Okay, number 5 is add some glitter and bam, you have a Christmas tree ornament that will be enjoyed for years to come.
That's like something that would end up on your tree, like, actually. I've seen. I know
You didn't see it.
you guys make ornaments just to bother Miss Jill.
No, we have one ornament that is called the boot monster that I made when I was in like 5th grade, but it's awesome. And it's the ugliest thing. And it says right dead center, right eye level, right in the center of the tree. And Jill for years has been taking it and sneaking it. It's kind of one of the little family tricks, sneaking it to the back of the tree. And Jake and his brothers have always found it and brought it back out to the front.
That's just what made me think of, I'm
The
sorry.
boot monster. Anyway, okay, number 4. Biodegradable packing material.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, God.
Absolutely.
It would work. Number 3, it can be recycled and made into benches.
That's true, though. I've seen some benches look straight up like sand.
Spam bench. Number 2, child's play toy. Not very safe, but hey, they shut up.
I like that one.
You like that? All right. And the top number 1 non-culinary use of Spam, quick substitute for weapons-grade uranium.
This is a good one.
Okay. All right, now, we're going to try something, and I'm hoping we haven't done this before. I have to apologize, particularly some of you who have come up through the youth program. I have lessons from doing youth, and sometimes they blur together, and so I can't remember who I did it to. So I immediately called Jake this morning, or this afternoon, and said, hey, did we talk about this thing before? And he said, I am the worst person because I've seen them all, and they all, like, for the last number of years. We're going to try something though. I want everybody to get up. This won't be on camera, so don't worry. Or wait, okay, camera, I'm just going to go.
Yeah, I do that
Okay.
too.
All right, so come on out here, and we're going to try something and see how this works. All right, what I want you to do is I want you to stand. I'm going to stand right here, kind of in the middle. Between me and that table, we're going to make a line. Just want everybody to stand this way. It doesn't. You don't have to be first in line. It really doesn't matter.
I just was
Not you! Not you!
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Your cousin. She's jumping up like
Oh,
she's.
yeah.
There you go. All right. Now, the way this is going to work is I'm going to give you some categories of stuff, okay? And you'll understand once we do one. But what on this wall over here is going to be one extreme of an answer, okay? And on that wall, or this stuff over here, will be the other extreme. Okay? And what you have to do is decide. It's a choice you have to make. For instance, if I said do you like yes or no, you would do that, okay? All right, so we'll start out with an easy one, okay? Over here, and by the way, when you decide, I want you to move to that location. And you can, if you can't decide completely, you can say, you know what, I sort of mostly like it, so I'm going to stand right here. And this would be the center line if you're undecided, which is not allowed except for one question.
Oh.
Can't stand in the middle except for one question. You'll understand that one in a little while. Okay, first question is peanut butter and jelly or peanut butter and jam? Ooh.
I don't like jelly or
You
jam.
guys,
Which do you? Okay.
All
All right. Now, what I forgot to mention is I don't panic, because we're all family here. Well, Jake and I are. Anyway, I may ask you why you chose something, okay? So, just like the Bible says, you must be able to defend yourself under things. So, for instance, if I said, why do you like peanut butter and jam better?
Because I feel like jam is easier to spread.
Jam is easier to spread. Very nice. Never thought of that. Yes, but Bernard, if you got jelly over here, why do you like jelly instead of jam?
I personally grew up with jelly.
Like as a Listen, when I was growing up, there was no such thing as a squeeze bottle for jelly.
Real
I
chunks
know they make
of
a
strawberry.
There you go.
Excuse me, did you ask me?
Yeah.
Real chunks of strawberry and like fruit and like delicious, like sweet.
I will say this. I grew up, just so you're aware, I grew up, peanut butter jelly was the deal. You know why? Because jam had seeds. However, Miss Jill, once I got married and she started making strawberry jam, I'm definitely on the jam
Yes.
side now.
Oh,
Why?
jam.
Because there's this much strawberry and this much sugar. So, but it's really yummy. Okay. All right, right here. You can sit there. You just answer. I'm just going to ask us. Over here we have at Thanksgiving, which we're coming up on fall season. Do you like apple pie or pecan pie? There you go.
Apple pie and ice cream.
Oh, apple pie a la mode. Okay, so why is apple pie a la mode the way to go? It's just delicious.
Pecan's getting your teeth.
It's the American way.
Yes, because the Pilgrims had ice cream as well.
Y'all are weird.
Okay, what's with the pecan people? You people are nuts. Well, okay, wait a minute, Lauren, why do you want the pecan pie?
It's very sweet.
Okay, so you're just
No,
anti-apple.
but I really like pecan pie too. Pecan pie like whipped cream, so good.
Oh, it is right.
It's like really moist. Like outside is caramelized, it's like pulverized. Like inside is in.
How do you do here? Well, you're more on pecan pie.
I don't dislike either one. It's just that I prefer pecan, however you say it, pecan pie, and it's crunchy.
Yeah, that's true. I do like the crunch on top. Now again, just to share a little bit of my background because it's all about me, is I grew up loving apple pie. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I started liking pecan pie.
Yeah.
So, and I actually like pecan pie better in some cases, except for Miss Smith's apple crumb cake. Okay, whatever. Anyway, all right, next one. You ready for this?
Yeah.
French fries or onion rings? No, you can't be in the middle. That's not allowed. French fries. Onion
We
rings.
get both.
No one's a big onion ring super.
I like both. We usually get both.
All right, you're closer to the onion side. I'll go with it. We'll go with it. All right, sounds like we got a preponderance of French fry people.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
It is cheaper. That's true. Usually they're cheaper.
healthier.
They're healthier.
Comes with the table, same with
All right, here we go. You ready for this one? At Christmas time, these are getting into the holiday season because we've come back from New York, and in our family that means it's Christmas season. Pretty much. Okay, at Christmas season, do you like the color red or the color green? This hurts my head. I don't know either.
Red for sure.
Red for sure. All right.
Here, you pick red. I'll pick red.
Lauren, you can't pick that.
All right, here's the one question where you're allowed to stand in the middle. And you will understand why when I ask the questions. Okay. Okay, are you ready for this? On this side, we've got gators. On this side, we have Seminoles.
No.
And, wait, and in the middle, we have the top-ranked Florida team in the NCAA right under CF. The Knights.
Here's about college football.
There you go.
You can go now.
I don't care when I go to the There you go. I'm a little biased toward UCF, but I do like the Seminoles more than I like Gators. Sorry for saying that, but I am biased to UCF because I went there and I paid a lot of money. Yeah, you're kind of the split household thing. Okay, there you go. SEC, that's a good conference. ACC is a good conference as well. Okay, here we go. All right, now we're going to get into some more. I mean, those are kind of fun questions you have to think about for a little bit. But here's some harder questions. So these are real questions, and you have to think about these for a second. Okay? And you may have these are the kinds of questions that I'm going to pose here that can be very divisive, okay, in our society today. So think about the answers. Okay. First of all, are you for or against capital punishment? For capital punishment or against capital punishment?
Hold on, let me think.
Wait, which one's which?
For capital punishment this is for capital punishment, which means you're okay with having somebody
I don't know.
have the ultimate punishment.
Yeah.
You don't have to be all the way at one side. You can be part of the way. All right. So why are you for capital punishment?
Because the Bible says that God gave the government a sword for a reason.
Okay, that's good. How about against it? Why are we against capital punishment? Yes.
Because the justice system made mistakes and sentence.
That's true. Absolutely true. And you know, and then we have folks like me, which I'd be right in the middle because it's a hard question.
It's a situation.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's a really good point. A lot of people, including myself, I'm one of those people. My wife would tell you I'm a peacemaker. I like to make everybody happy. Usually that involves candy. But I like to make people that are on opposing sides happy and peacemaker. And because of that, I don't like to answer questions like this. It's hard. These are hard questions, but these are the questions that we face in society today. And as Christians, we have to represent something, whatever God is telling us to represent, with passion and with conviction. Okay? So let's keep those in mind. Okay, next one.
Just bring up a potential point that maybe somebody else might be thinking about here, something like capital punishment. I don't think you can really I don't think there's a clear definitive answer to that as a base statement. Because it depends on the case, it depends on the situation, the individual, the judge, the jury, everything depends on the specific case. You cannot make a decision one way or another depending on the case.
Absolutely true. I 100% agree with you in that, and most of the rest of these questions are that way, are that there is probably not a definitive answer except what God knows, and when we get up there, we can ask Him. But in the meantime, we do the best to follow God's leading for these things. Okay, next one, another hard one. Okay, if you're for or against abortion. Against is over here, for is over there. It's a hard question because so you're all against, which by the way is a very churchy answer, right? I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that it's real. It's true. It's what we're taught. What about cases of rape and incest? What about when you're attacked or something? I don't know. I'm just throwing these things out. I'm playing devil's advocate here. You guys are you're standing up for yourself, which is awesome. Yes?
I have a friend whose mom was pregnant and it was a very complicated pregnancy. And she went to the church on advice to visit and she struck work and told her no. So she didn't, and she and the baby both died.
Yeah. Wow.
So
So
in certain cases.
There's the health of the mom, absolutely, I get that. So these are, like I said, I don't have an answer. And I don't think that we all feel a certain way, and I don't judge anybody for answering in any way, because I don't have the answer. But the world does. I mean, the world judges you on your answers, whether they have an answer or not. You know what I mean? And it's hard to do that. I mean, it's hard to kind of live in that scenario. All right.
Could I just, sorry to butt in again, but just to bring up a good point, and also like, I'm making a statement here, but I'm standing on this one, but I think, you know, being able to sympathize with someone who's in a situation like that, or someone who's been raped, is very important that we don't be so strongly with what we believe that we can try to understand what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's not enough of that in the world today, of trying to understand. I'm right in the middle at work of doing a contract negotiation. It's not nearly as critical as an abortion, yes or no. But my job as the program manager is to try to negotiate the best position for Harris Corporation with this other company. But to do that, I have to understand where the other company is coming from. Because if they are hard over on their position and we are hard over on our position, we will never come to an agreement. And then it hurts both of us. Right? So you have to kind of understand where the other person's coming from. So your point is well taken. Okay, next one. A little bit easier, but still very, very controversial nowadays, is do you believe that it's okay over here, or not okay over there, to have, to tear down Confederate monuments? Monuments to the, wait, which side is over there? Okay to tear them down, and not okay to tear them down. This is interesting, you know, and this is in the news a lot right now. A lot of people feel very strongly about this, and they're tearing stuff down, whether they have permission to or not. I am a Civil War buff. I love reading stuff about the Civil War. Nerd. Anyway, but that's right. And Jake has fueled this fire by getting me over the years a Civil War musket and a Civil War sword and bayonet. So it's kind of cool. We got these at home. So anyway, I am, although I don't believe that the right thing, that slavery was correct. I think that was just an abomination and a bad thing. But I've always been more drawn to the southern side because of the generals and the stuff that they did, because I was more into the war part, kind of whatever. But so, and the way they did business versus the way the North did business. If you read through it, it was kind of crazy like that. But the world today is so hard and so polarized, and we are supposed to be representative of God, like I said. But at the same time, we got to be able to point out, just like you were saying, now, at least listen, understand it, and be able to communicate with them. Okay, next one. All right, here we go. Should we, or should we not, build a wall?
What? But where's the not?
Should we, or should we not, build a wall? Meaning building a wall and keeping
There's a better way of keeping people out.
immigrants out, right?
Too much money.
All right, so what did I say? Should we build a wall or should we not build a wall? Okay, should we not build a wall? Why not?
Honestly, I feel like it's better when you say inheritance. It costs too much money to do.
Okay, that's true, that's true. All right, what about over here? Should we build a wall? Yeah, go ahead.
I think walls are inherently less racist than border patrol.
Okay, ooh, that's a good one. I like that. It's a solution rather than a subjective one. I love that answer. That's it right there.
That is true, JD.
Okay. All right, here's the last one. Last one. And this is going to be interesting too, because there's a churchy answer and then there's a non-churchy answer. So don't be afraid to do the non-churchy answer. Not that I never mind. You'll figure this out. Okay. All right. Do you believe that the story of creation in the Bible is literal or figurative? Literal or figurative? Do you believe that the story of creation in the Bible is literal or figurative?
It means, was it just a
Wow.
No, was it like symbolic?
Or did it actually happen?
So and when I say that, what I mean there, of course, is the literal story says God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. There's a lot of theories out there, and if you read the Bible, that it's figurative in the sense that he was talking about periods of time, not necessarily a day. And you could say, you know what, we're actually in the 6th day of creation right now. Well, yes, go ahead.
Hebrew, it's actually day isn't literally a day. It's actually a period of time.
There you go.
The word is yom.
What?
The word yom means age, night, sunrise to sunset, or period of time.
Period. Yeah.
It can mean more than one thing.
Yeah, okay. So, and what about you, Bernard? You're kind of, sort of, not quite on one side or the other.
Kind of with him on the whole, when they mentioned days, it's not a full 24 hours, it's rather a period of time past time.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, that's actually something that I researched like earlier this year. And the word yom, it does have like a few different meanings. But if you look like actually into the Bible, like the other places that it's used, the Bible uses the word yom to describe 1 24-hour day.
Okay.
An example of that is Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, which is a period of divorce. Everyone knows that. All right. So some of these are, like I said, these are hard questions, but sometimes we have to kind of at least think about them so that we understand what it is. All right, go ahead and sit down. We're gonna talk a little more about this, about choices and decisions. No.
Also, another thing to think about is when Adam and Eve's kids went off and married wives.
Where did wives come from?
So let me ask you this: as you're thinking about questions like that, or at least this is the way I tend to think about that, because I've been asked that because I've been working with youth forever, and one of there's two big questions that youth typically have over the years, and one of them is, what about creation? Was it really 7 days? And the other one is, what in the world does Revelation mean?
Whoa, you forgot the third one. What's for dinner?
That's right.
What'd you just say?
Right.
That's another one.
Right. So one of the things that I've always said to them, and I encourage, this is the way I think. When there's a question that I really don't know the answer to, like, is creationism, the story, is it literal or is it figurative? The way I look at it is, does the answer to that question affect my relationship with God? And the answer for me, for that question is, no. It doesn't affect me. It happened thousands of years ago, and I'll find out when I get there. So it's not, it doesn't bother me. Other people, there's some folks that I know who are very, very, very adamant about that question. And it does affect their relationship with God. Okay, then do the research, find out, pray, let God tell you what the answer is. Great. I don't worry about that stuff because, like I said, I'm okay with it either way. And to me, I look at it and I go, I really want to say the Bible, literally the way it says it, is a great thing. And I want that to be I don't know if I understand it completely, but the human understanding of that 7-day period, 24-hour period would be awesome. But then I look at it, I'm an engineer by training, so I have a lot of science in my background, a lot of math, a lot of stuff. So I look at that and I go back and all the things that you taught in college about physics and all the stuff, and the origin of the universe, and I think to myself, dude, what is a better explanation of the start of the universe than the Big Bang? God saying, bang, and it's there. So to me, it's like, okay, both of them are kind of cool. And both of them have God in them, so that's the way I kind of look at things. Maybe it's simplistic, but that's the way I look at it. Okay, we're talking about a rock and a hard place. You're between a rock and a hard place. Making choices, we're talking about. We're going to go through some of this stuff in Corinthians, and we're gonna move faster, Jake, I promise. You've looked at his watch. I don't know how much time do we have.
0 minutes.
0 minutes, okay. Okay, have you ever had to make a hard choice?
Yeah.
Not something like fries and onion rings like we did before, but obviously onion rings are better. Except you can get onion bread. But most of our daily lives are wrapped around choices, wrapped around decisions that we have to make. Some are easy, some are hard. I kind of clicked through some of these. Some don't mean a great deal, but some have a lot more weight in their meaning. What is the question behind it? Can you turn? Well, okay. Yeah, that's better. I can see it a little better. That way I don't have to turn. Okay, so let's think about decisions. Most decisions don't have a clear-cut right or wrong answer, and I'll tell you why in a second on the next slide. But there's other circumstances that go into them. So when making decisions, I think about three things. I think three things are important about when you're doing it. These three thoughts that are there. Okay, so the first one is never make a decision on an empty stomach unless you're trying to figure out what to eat. That was a joke. You can laugh. That's okay. All right, whatever. Okay, no, two is real. Two is real. First, this is the real first one. If you have all the information that you need to make a decision, there's no decision to make. Because if you have all the information you need to make a decision, the information is pointing you to the answer. And therefore, there is no decision to make. It's clear cut. It's right there. Right? If I'm looking at a piece of paper to paint, and I'm deciding what color to paint on the piece of paper first, and the only color I have is blue, what am I going to paint? Okay. Define physics, but okay. Blue, right? You have to paint it blue because it's the only thing that's the same concept. And so everybody has to make decisions on imperfect information. We don't have all of the answers, which is why a decision has to be made. And this is true for the leaders of large corporations all the way down to anybody who lives. It's true. You have to make a decision. The second thing is this, and that's kind of scary because you have to make a decision. So that becomes scary. But here's the cool one. Number three is you can always make another decision. So even if you are stuck with the idea of I got to make a decision about whatever. The classic one is if you're in high school and you're deciding what college to go to, right? Or whatever. It might be as simple, as what am I going to wear today? For me, it's really not a big deal because it's like, okay, what's clean? Nothing? Okay, I'll wear it yesterday. Okay. But you can always make another decision. Even if you find that you made a decision that was poor, you make another decision to fix it. Right? It was a bad decision. Okay, I'm going to decide to fix it. And I'm going to do something else. That doesn't mean there's not ramifications to the first decision. But it does mean that you have the opportunity to change a decision. Every decision you make, you can make another decision. Doesn't matter what it is. If you buy a car, if you make another decision in less than 3 days, you can return it. It's the Florida law. So, things like that. So, don't be afraid of making decisions. That's the point of that. Y'all have to. Everybody does. And nobody has the perfect information. So and people can give you advice. People can give you thoughts. They're thinking what they would do. You still have to make a decision. But you can always make another. Okay. Corinthians. These people were mostly good. The Corinthians, the book of Corinthians. Paul wrote to the book of Corinthians. Because the book of Corinthians was lonely. No. He wrote the letter to the Corinthians because they were kind of messed up, and he was trying to help them get back on and stay on God's path. And his advice works for us today as well, particularly when it comes to making decisions. So I'm going to go through this. There's like 10 things here, and they're all in 1 Corinthians chapters 9 and 10. So we're going to kind of bounce through these real quick, and I'll read them off to you so you can understand where I'm coming from. 1 Corinthians. You can know if you're looking it up that it's 1 Corinthians because it's right before 2 Corinthians. Okay. Okay, here we go. When you're faced with a decision, ask yourself these questions. And like I said, there's a whole slew of them. What helps my witness for Christ? This is the way Paul did things. In chapter 9, verse 19 through 22, he says, though I am free and believe I belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews I become like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this all for why? The sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. So as you're looking at it as a decision, how is that decision going to help or hurt your witness? And so you apply that to the help make your decision. Okay? Paul is talking about there, he became all things to all people. He would do, if somebody liked to play sticks, I don't know what they played back then, then he would learn how to play sticks or whatever. And he'd put on, Paradise Theater or something, and he'd be playing sticks. Okay. This is a musical joke. Never mind. Okay. All right. Is my choice motivated by desire to help others know Christ? I just read that in verse 23. For all, I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessing. Paul did all these things for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of the good news, sharing the good news with other people. Is my choice my best effort? In verse 25, he says, everyone who competes in the games goes through the strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. So, is my choice, am I making the best effort? Is the choice kind of running away from the hard thing? Or is it really doing the hard thing that God wants me to do? Am I putting forth the best that God has given me in that decision? Okay? Number 4, is my choice against any particular scripture? In verse 10, verse 11, chapter 10, verse 11, it says, these things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. It's talking about how we want to make sure that the choices that we make are scriptural, are backed up by the scripture. You don't want to do something that's not scriptural, or you're written down as warnings for us to not do that, so that you can stand firm. All right. Is my choice the most beneficial choice of action? 1023 says, find it. There it is. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything is constructive. So, is the choice I'm making constructive for me, or for the gospel, or for whatever? I'm allowed to do things, but is it the best thing to do? Right? Okay, next one is my choice all about me, or am I thinking about others? And then in verse 24 it says, nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others. Pretty straightforward, very churchy answer. The choices that we make should not be hurting other people, just to benefit ourselves, right? That's not what God would want us to do. 7, is my choice motivated out of love or selfishness? It's kind of the same question, but in verse 28 he says, but if anyone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the man who told you and for conscience sake. The other man's conscience, not yours. For why should my freedom be judged by another's conscience? If I take part in a meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something I thank God for? This is a reference to food that was given to idols, and then whether he was allowed to eat it or not. To Paul, it's very clear, he talks about this a lot, it's very clear that it doesn't matter to him, because to him, offering it to idols doesn't mean anything. It's just barbecue. Right? So he's like, oh yeah, make him some pork butt. And that's what no, maybe not, he's Jewish. That wouldn't be right. So he's thinking chicken, that's right, chicken bone. But to other people, again, it's a tripping stone for them, to their belief. And so he's saying, I'm not going to eat it, not out of my conscience, but because it's going to bother somebody else's conscience. And I don't want to drive a wedge between them and God by them looking at me saying it's okay for him to do this stuff. So that means it's okay to worship an idol. You know, you see where the kind of the jump goes there. All right. Does my choice glorify God? Verse 31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. It's a pretty easy one. Again, very churchy answer, but it's true. The decisions that we make need to be glorifying God, not glorifying ourselves, not doing something that maybe is the easy way out or whatever. And when it comes to fruition, we need to give God the glory for that. Does my choice cause anyone else to be tempted to sin? 10:32. It's kind of what we just talked about, but 32 says, do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God. Going on to 33, even as I try to please everybody in every way, for I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Follow my example, and as I follow the example of Christ. That jumps into all the way to chapter 11. But does my choice cause somebody else to sin? That's a hard one. Particularly as you do things like if you're like a counselor for a youth program or something like that. I mean, I've done that for a long time, and things like that. If you're doing something that they will look at you, because they'll look at you, and they look at me and they say, boy, is he fat? Then they say he's bald. And then, they say, if I'm doing something, if I get angry or something like that at somebody, well, I'll remember that. And it's unfortunate because that's not my intent. But I have to constantly be aware of my actions and the choices that I make, the decisions that I make, so that they don't impact other people in a negative way. I think that was the last one. Okay. So there's a lot of guidance that you can get just out of those two chapters. The Bible is full of other things associated, things like that talk about how to make decisions. But we can deal with these types of questions in our lives, these big questions, through the use of two words, two important words. Wisdom, as in wisdom. All right, wisdom. That's what the Bible's always talking about. You read, thank you, Proverbs. Yeah, it's Proverbs. Because it's right after the Psalms. The Proverbs. Anyway, and it's talking about wisdom. The wise man has gray hair, it says. It does. And there's a classic statement that says, how do you get wisdom? We need to make decisions, good decisions, with wisdom. How do you get wisdom? By making bad decisions, right? You learn from those. It's important. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it's true. We get wisdom, we get how we deal with life out of making bad choices. It's really good if you can learn from somebody else's bad choices, but we don't typically do that, unfortunately. You know how I know that? Because if we did, by this time, all kids would be perfect, because they would have learned from their parents' mistakes. And they don't. And I didn't. And, Jake certainly hasn't. Maybe they would all have different names. No, that's the perfect world. Okay. So we want to learn from those decisions by making bad decisions. And we do that by making bad decisions, unfortunately. Okay, how about... well, I apparently didn't finish that slide.
I don't know. That seems like something you do.
It does. Okay, how about it?
I like it.
How about it? That's
Okay, help out.
Let me think. Give me a second. I don't even know. We're just going to move on.
Probably the point you just made.
So, Robert 7. It apparently wasn't important, I guess. I don't know. I was drinking or something. Anyway. Okay, so now, this is something this is kind of put in at the end here. I'm almost done, so don't panic. But what does God's law say? I mean, these are pretty simple. What does God's original law say? How about that?
613.
No, much smaller. Much smaller.
10 Commandments.
Thank you, 10 Commandments. Can anybody name them?
All right.
Love your
1 through
father
10.
and mother. Obey.
Wait. Say that louder so Jake can hear. So,
Love, obey your father.
Honor.
Isn't it honor?
okay, honor your father and mother so that you get what?
Good luck.
A high
Not
five.
good luck.
Inheritance.
No, not an inheritance.
Not 12 years.
Long life, right? And why? Why? You think about this for a second. Why would you get long life from honoring your parents?
Because they won't kill you.
Yeah.
No, not yet. That's a little iffy. Listen, I've known your father for a long time. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. But think about this. We just talked about this, right? If all kids learn from their parents, it'd be a perfect world, but they don't, right? So, but if you think about it, if kids were honoring their parents all the time and listening to all the wonderful life lessons that you can learn from your parents, you could avoid the mistakes that your parents made, and therefore you might live longer. Yeah, right. And we looked valuable. Oh. All right. So honor your father and mother. That's in here somewhere. There they are all. Okay. You shall have no other gods. You shall worship no idols. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. And you shall remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. The first four are pointed toward whom?
Us.
The Lord.
Says you.
Well, I'm sorry. You're right. It's God talking. I should have said it.
Yeah.
Actually, it's God's writing on his finger. But nevertheless, you're right. It's our relationship with God. It has to do with our relationship with God. And the bottom six are how do you deal with other people? Honor your father and mother. Don't commit murder.
Don't steal.
No, don't. You know, it doesn't say don't kill. The world always says that. Thou shalt not kill. That's what the world says. It doesn't say that.
Murder.
It says thou shalt not commit murder.
King James
Hold on, I should have gone with that one on this second. Do not commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't covet. By the way, it says make sure, men, that you don't covet
Another man's wife
no,
or a donkey.
No, or donkey. It's like or a bull, or a donkey, or his wife, or
the donkey's wife.
no. That's just it. It was the way the list goes that I'm like, wow, society was different back then.
My brother's wife is a donkey.
That's a whole other class. Okay.
There is another set of rules.
That's right. All right. What we end up with is situational moralism. The world will look at these 10 commandments and they'll use them to their benefit.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's how they'll say, okay, well, as long as I have met 6 out of these through my life, I'm 60%, I'm over 50%, I'm into heaven, I'm golden. Right? That's what they'll say. As long as the good outweighs the bad in their life, they think they're good. They're sweet. So, but what we end up with is a world today that practices situational moralism. And what is situational moralism? It is something back there that's not cut.
An example of where this
Are you correct? What is, there we go. What is situational moralism? I did this pretty quick this afternoon. When we change our morals to fit the situation, that happens all the time. And that's how decisions are made today. In our government, which I'm ashamed to say is that's the way it is today. Whether you're on the left or the right, it doesn't matter. Everybody does it. I mean, that's just me saying that. Everybody does it. But it's not just the government. It's people. And they get it from where? Where do they get this idea that it's okay to practice situational moralism?
Their sinful nature.
Yes, you're right.
The rational.
Wait, hold on a second. You're right, but that's a cop-out answer.
Their entitlements.
No.
Selfishness.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. They all can contribute to that.
Philosophy?
But what? So what did you say?
Oh, what did benefits them?
First,
Oh.
I can't remember the first thing I said.
You said selfishness.
Selfishness, second thing I said, but yeah. It's like the first thing I said was rationalism, like you rationalize.
Rationalize stuff? Well, no, that's how they get away with it.
Yeah.
They get rationalize it,
Because
right?
you're trying to be selfish because you want what you want.
Yeah. So, but the world today, the influence of all of the media and all the stuff is, the answer is, I'm going to get mine, and I don't care how it affects. Right? And that's a situational moralism. So therefore, they're going, well, I can do this because it's really not hurting that many people. Right? It's not going to bother that, I can get away with that. It's okay. And they rationalize it. I'm not hurting that many people. I'm going to, whatever, pick a thing. And you come to the same. The world's very selfish, and they make their decisions out of a selfish nature. And then when we're, as Christians, as we are called to stand, to make a decision between a rock and a hard place, it can't be out of selfishness. It's got to be out of God. And if it's not out of God, then it's not the right answer. I don't care what it is. It's not the right answer. We may think it's the right answer. We may feel like it's the right answer. We may want to run down that path so fast because there's cake at the other end of that answer. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing. So we have to be seeking out God in those things. I don't even remember what's next. I'm alive. Finally, okay. Finally. So keep that in mind as we're going there. And I'll leave you with this from Philippians. Brothers, whatever is true, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. This is a famous verse. I'm sure you've heard it before. But whatever is true, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, these are the kinds of things that we should be looking for. The world today tends to look at things that are almost exactly opposite of this, which is a shame. It's like, particularly in politics, I mean, it's just so easy to jump on politics. Mm-hmm. They don't look for somebody good. John McCain was really good at this, by the way, on the opposite side. But people will look at somebody and say, I'm not looking at their good qualities. I'm looking at every little nitpick of thing that they've done wrong so that I can and get what I need. Right? Mm-hmm. It's just so obvious in politics. And it's laughable. And it's getting worse, which is unfortunate. You guys are going to live longer than I am, I hope, and you'll get to. I hope it gets better, because I'm getting ready to kind of hang out and relax, and I won't carry one. So I'm planning on getting senile any day. Anyway.
Too late.
Too late. But if we are seeking peace in our life, where should we be seeking it from? The God of peace, right? And the God of peace will be with you. If we're seeking out these things that God, all these wonderful things that God gives us, and that relationship that we have with God, the rest of it will fall into place, and we will feel peace. Doesn't mean we're not going to have problems. Doesn't mean we're not going to have to make decisions that are going to be hard, but we're going to have peace. And as long as we're following God, He promises us peace in those decisions. Okay? All right. Let's pray real quick. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for giving us the ability to make decisions. But Father, we covet your guidance. We ask for your leading in our lives so that those decisions can be made for your benefit, for the gospel's benefit, and for our benefit in your plan for our lives. Give us the strength to seek you out and the willingness to follow the hard answers when we don't like them. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay?